Chapter 276, Rafter Pound. Civilois Prefecture was located west of the Loan Kingdom, across the Hornasus mountain range from the Intis Republic. And in Backland, there was a street named after it, on the edge of Empress Borough, where the headquarters of the capital's police department was located. Many people chose to settle down here for the peace of mind, and Rafter Pound was one of them. The baronet stood by the closed window in his warm activity room at Unit 29 in his cotton-quilted pajamas, staring diagonally across the street at Civilois Yard. He was in his early 40s, but the sides of his hair had turned white. He had puffy eyes and clear wrinkles on his face. His body constantly emitted the smell of alcohol. On the floor behind Rafter lay some torn lingerie, and opposite it was a burning fireplace. The baronet raised his glass and gulped the rest of the liquid in it. Then he walked slowly to the door and returned to his bedroom to get some sleep. As there was no pipe to transfer the heat from the fireplace, he felt the bone-chilling chill of late autumn as soon as he left the activity room. Rafter Pound cursed under his breath as he staggered to the bedroom door and twisted the handle.
Damn it!
The bedroom was dark, with only a faint crimson glow shining in. Rafter was about to close the door behind him and collapse into bed when his eyes suddenly froze. A figure was sitting quietly on a chair beside the curtain. The figure wore a pair of grayish-blue pants and a cap. The entire person was completely hidden in the shadows. Sensing Baronet Pound's gaze, the man slowly raised his head and looked over. His face was painted red, yellow, and white, looking like the funniest clown. Rafter was about to shout and run when he saw a revolver aimed at him and heard two deep and hoarse sentences.
I advise you not to do anything unwise. If you cooperate, I won't harm you, and I won't take away your belongings, if you still have any left.
Rafter Pound's expression changed a few times, and he very obediently closed the bedroom door. Then he half raised his hands and sat on the edge of the bed. He hiccuped in his drunken stupor, and his body trembled slightly as he reminded,
You, what do you want from me? Civilois Yard is just across the street.
Disguised as a clown, Klein had changed his voice and tone as he warned.
I know, but I think I'm closer to you than you are to Civilois Yard, and my purpose is just to ask you a few questions.
Before he came to Civilois Street, he had divined if there would be any danger in making this trip in the mysterious space above the gray fog, and had obtained an answer that it was very safe. Rafter's lips trembled as laughed bitterly.
Questions? Here we go again. Am I never going to escape this nightmare?
Klein continued the topic.
Have there been many people coming to you with questions?
Rafter replied as though he was on the brink of collapse.
No, not only questions. After my uncle, the Honorable Old Viscount, passed away, too many things have happened to me. The amiable old butler resigned for no reason and has vanished. Those servants and maids would change one after the other without warning, becoming unfamiliar and cold. They were looking for something. Yes, they were looking for something. I wasn't even 10 back then. All I could do was watch, and I didn't dare tell anyone. I was afraid that I would never wake up again.
Looking for something? Were they searching for the underground structure, or the treasures of the Pound family, such as the Beyonder characteristics and mystical items buried near the evil spirit? The royal family and the churches must have realized this, as the higher-ups must know about the law of Beyonder characteristics conservation and indestructibility. Since the Pound family was in ruins, these things should have been taken back, right? Unless the old Viscount paid a huge price and bought some other rare Beyonder characteristics and mystical items of the same sequence to conceal the matter of the underground structure.
After Klein finished listening quietly, he generated many guesses. He seemed relaxed, but in reality, he could attack at any time.
How long has this been going on for?
Rafter Pound gave a somewhat crazy laugh.
I don't know. There are faces around me that I don't know. How can I be sure that the remaining people aren't also in cahoots? I pretended not to notice anything. After trembling for a few years, I was enticed by them to do drinking, sex, gambling, smoking marijuana, and all sorts of things that make me look like a piece of trash. They're finally relieved and are no longer watching me. When I sold that house, whoosh, all of them left, with no idea where they went. No, they must still be secretly monitoring me, preventing me from calling the police. Right, they aren't letting me call the police.
This fellow has some mental illness. I have no idea if what he said is true or false. In his aura, the change in his mood colors adhere to logic. But what if he just feels that he had let down the old Viscount and fantasized a whole sequence of events like this to find an excuse for his degeneration? Later, he would keep telling himself that until he's utterly convinced.
As a qualified keyboard warrior, Klein, who knew a little of everything, had seen similar cases in his previous life. After thinking for 2 seconds, he asked,
"What did these people ask you?"
Rafter waved his arms and growled under his breath.
They asked me how the 2 children of the old Viscount died. They asked me what abnormal behavior the old Viscount had over the years. I wasn't even 10 years old at the time, so I don't know anything.
Klein lowered his left hand and attempted to confirm if Baronet Pound knew of the underground structure via multiple angles.
Calm down. Please calm down.
Time flew by as the question and answer session ensued. Klein said in a hoarse voice,
"You really don't seem to know anything. I'm very sorry to bother you, but it's time for me to leave."
He stood up, bowed slightly, and appeared very well-mannered. And almost at the same time, the excitement and appearance of having a breakdown on Rafter Pound's face vanished. His light blue eyes became abnormally deep, as though he was examining something. When he saw the intruder about to stand up straight, he immediately reverted back to his previous performance: grief, anger, madness, bitterness, and neuroticism. At that moment, a mysterious voice suddenly resounded in his ears.
Crimson!
Klein injected spirituality into a slumber charm and threw it at Rafter with his unarmed left hand. Amidst crisp, crackling sounds, a strong sense of serenity spread out, enveloping the baronet, causing him to shut his eyes involuntarily and fall weakly onto the bed. Klein patted Rafter's pajamas, and with his hand on his chest, he made another bow.
"I'm sorry. The questions from before are for the comparison of what shall ensue. Next, it's the process of entering your dream and spirit channeling."
Then he used the dream charm and entered Rafter's dream like a nightmare. In the gray, fragmentary, constantly coruscating world, Klein soberly walked beside Rafter, watching him see the blank faces of the servants and maids who had no facial features as they gave off abnormal and frightening vibes. He saw Rafter turning his head only to see an old face silently gazing at him, watching him curl up in the corner shivering, and him being enveloped by a shadow little by little.
This matches what he had described earlier.
Klein tried to guide the dream to make sense of the situation, but it was as though Baronet Pound had a very serious psychological trauma over these matters. Any tiny bit of stimulation would cause him to scream and run like a madman in his dreams. This made it impossible for Klein to get any more information. Thus, he withdrew from the dream and cast another slumber charm on Rafter Pound before taking out a mantha extract and other materials, in preparation to channel his spirit in a mediumship ritual. After responding to himself, Klein's spirituality passed through the storm of thoughts and saw the illusory image of Rafter, an illusory image based on the body of heart and mind. Klein hesitated for a moment before asking,
"What did the old Viscount say to you before he died?"
Rafter Pound muddle-headedly replied,
He wants me to maintain the family.
Klein asked again, in a tone of deliberate affirmation.
"What else?"
Rafter answered blankly.
He wanted me to remember the glory of the ancestors.
Klein nodded and asked,
"What were those people looking for?"
Rafter gave the same answer.
I don't know.
Klein continued asking and compared it with the answers Pound had said before, finally coming to the conclusion that Baronet Pound had not lied, and what he had just said was true. At this point, he didn't stay any longer. He passed through the storm of thoughts and allowed his extended spirituality to return to his body. Next, Klein methodically tidied up the scene and tossed Azek's copper whistle a few times, using its nature to interfere with any possible divination investigations. After doing all of this, Klein bowed once again.
"Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Baronet."
Then he turned, opened the window, jumped into the street, and disappeared into the night. After a while, Rafter Pound suddenly opened his eyes. Around those light blue eyes there was a circle of ruptured capillaries. He flipped himself up suddenly and stared at the open oriel window. After making a long detour to East Borough, Klein washed his disguise and changed into normal clothes. As if nothing had happened, he returned to 15 Minsk Street in Sherwood Borough. He didn't rest, nor did he think about what he should do with the underground structure. Instead, he once again entered the fog. At the very end of the ancient long table, Klein slowly opened his palm, revealing several strands of brown hair. They were Rafter Pound's hair he had gathered when Rafter was sleeping.
There's still the final step, confirming with divination above the gray fog.
Klein silently muttered to himself. Then he conjured a pen and paper. He wrote down the content that he had already thought about beforehand. Rafter Pound's future.
I want to see what will happen to you in the future so as to confirm the past.
Klein leaned back in his chair and began to recite the divination statement. As the ancient structure involved the 6 Orthodox gods, he was afraid that there would be problems if he divined something directly, so he changed his way of thinking and helped Rafter Pound ask about the future. Chapter 277, Finalizing a Plan. Rafter Pound's future. Klein held onto the baronet's hair, closed his eyes, and entered a deep slumber with the help of cogitation. In the gray, gloomy world, he saw a narrow, irregular cave. Rafter Pound, with his puffy eye bags and gray hair at his temples, was propping himself up on his elbows, crawling forward like a reptile to leave the hole. Then, with a flash, he retrieved a black iron emblem of unknown origins and wore it on his chest. The emblem had a scepter carved on it, as well as a hand that was holding onto the scepter tightly.
Tutor.
Klein jerked out of the dream and sat up. According to Miss Bodyguard's introduction, the black iron emblem was engraved with the imperial coat of arms of the 4th epoch's Tudor Empire royal household. It was identical to the one he had seen in the ancient structure.
Rafter Pound is definitely not as simple as he seems to be.
Klein rubbed his forehead and muttered to himself. As a seer, he had his own interpretation of the revelation he had received from the dream. On the one hand, he knew that it was something Rafter Pound would do in the future, and on the other hand, he believed that it meant that Rafter Pound had a deep connection with the Tudor family.
Through the 3 tests of direct questioning, dream probing, and spirit channeling, Rafter Pound didn't expose any problems, nor did he make me notice that anything was amiss. If I didn't have a 4th test, I probably would have been deceived by him. Yes, maybe he really doesn't know anything at present, and that it was a true act. In the future, he might even chance upon an opportunity to form a connection with the Tudor family. But it's more likely that he has already learned a lot from the old Viscount. Without confidence, he intentionally turned decadent and acted crazy and ignorant. For him to be able to hide from my dream and spirit channeling, it should be a result of some beyonder powers. He probably wasn't acting at that time and was really in a muddled state. Otherwise, he would have exposed himself in front of a person like me who is very experienced in such matters. What beyonder powers could it be? What sequence number is he? Or is he the kind that is born with certain beyonder powers?
Klein proceeded this line of thought and soon realized he had reached a dead end. He quickly pulled himself out of this dead end and changed his angle of thinking.
Rafter Pound has a deep connection with the Tudor family. Can I make a bold hypothesis that he's actually a descendant of the Tudor family? If the blood relationship between him and the old Viscount is real, then things are going to be interesting. The entire Pound family is a branch of the Tudor family that changed its surname to escape pursuit. They contributed tremendously and were conferred aristocratic titles, and they returned to the center of power, one step at a time. Meanwhile, they were secretly searching for the secret remains left behind by the Tudor Empire in Backland. After an unknown period of time, they finally found something. Thus, they bought what currently belongs to Millet Carter's house and built an exaggerated basement, which was used to explore the surrounding area. 30 to 40 years ago, they found the ruins and built a secret door to it. But during the exploration process, an accident occurred. That evil spirit didn't recognize any of the so-called Tudor descendants at all. The 2 heirs of the old Viscount died in that room, in the deepest corner, one after the other. Even their Beyonder characteristics and mystical items couldn't be retrieved. Although the old Viscount spent a great price to buy similar Beyonder characteristics, making it seem like the two heirs had died relatively normal deaths, the consecutive deaths made the royal household and the churches suspicious. Therefore, after the old Viscount passed away, Rafter Pound deliberately exaggerated and distorted the secret investigations of the past, to frighten himself into having mental problems. He began to engage in debauchery so as to avoid the attention of others. This can explain what previously puzzled me. How can a Viscount family be placed under the control of some mysterious person without any action from the royal household and the churches? Even if controlling him was necessary, they would do it in a milder and undetectable manner. For example, using a faceless of my sequence 6 pathway. A child can even sense something abnormal, much less the powerful Beyonders of the royal household and the 3 churches. The reason why they were unaware can only be explained by the fact that they were the ones who had sent those people.
Yes.
Back then, I surmised that the Tudor family and the Trunsois family grasped the Black Emperor pathway, so due to the need to act, they would establish dynasties to maintain the style and uniqueness of the Solomon Empire. On this point, Miss Bodyguard has indirectly proven it. The Black Emperor pathway sequence 9 is lawyer, a Beyonder job that is extremely good at using order, yes. Rafter Pound was able to deceive my dream and spirit channeling abilities because of this. Perhaps he's gone one step further? He cooperated with me sufficiently, so in his muddled state in the dream, he was still able to subconsciously use the loophole of order and affect the development in the direction he wishes to have. Upon careful consideration, during the process of spirit channeling, Rafter Pound didn't seem to really lie. However, his truth was only a partial truth. Maintain the family, and remember the glory can be referring to the Pound family and also the Tudor family.
Klein's train of thought became clearer bit by bit, and he had an overall assessment of the situation.
From Rafter Pound's current attitude, the evil spirit shouldn't be able to escape without any external help. Otherwise, the baronet would have long thought of a way to save himself. It doesn't matter if the evil spirit would come looking for him. As long as it escapes the seal and creates a disaster, the secret of the underground ruins would be exposed to the royal household and the churches. When that happens, Rafter will definitely be implicated. The room opposite had collapsed, but it didn't affect the power that restricted the evil spirit. This means that as long as the innermost room isn't directly destroyed, the evil spirit wouldn't be able to escape. The plan is clear then. I would buy some explosives from Kaspar's and collapse the entrance so that no one can get in, leaving the evil spirit buried underground forever. When I'm powerful enough, I can consider finishing it and help the citizens of Backlund get rid of this latent danger and harvest some valuable items in the process. However, how should I collapse it safely? I don't know anything. Maybe Kaspar's knows a demolition expert. After all, he is a black market weapons merchant.
Klein quickly finalized the plan and decided on finding Kaspar's tomorrow evening. He would try to settle the matter of the underground ruins within the week. As for the true relationship between the Pound family and the Tudor family, and for Rafter's abnormality, he didn't want to probe too deeply into it.
It's none of my business.
Klein grumbled and quickly plummeted down past the gray fog and returned to the real world. On Friday morning, Klein went out early as usual and pretended to be very busy. The truth was, he had once again gone to the Keelag Club to practice his shooting and read the newspapers. He enjoyed himself quite a bit. At tea time, he was about to leave after staying there the entire day, but he was surprised to see Mary Gale, his former employer, and Talim Dumont, the equestrian teacher, enter the club at the same time. They were accompanied by a number of gentlemen in double-breasted frock coats and beautiful ladies in fine makeup. Among them was the Daily Observer reporter, Mike Joseph.
Oh, Detective Moriarty, what a coincidence.
Mike, with his charming eyes but rather rough skin, took the initiative to greet him. Klein smiled and replied,
Mr. Reporter, are you done with your investigative news?
It's done, thanks to your help. Let me do the introductions. This is the famous detective, Mr. Sherlock Moriarty, a good friend of Talim's.
Mike waved his arm and said. After both sides greeted each other, Mike continued.
I've roughly figured out who Kapum is. I'll tell you in detail when I have the time. In short, I have every reason to believe that Cyber's death was caused by a copycat killer and not by the serial killer. Haha, you will see the news of my investigations on the papers tomorrow.
It's just as I thought.
Klein smiled in response. At that moment, Mike seemed to remember something and turned his head to Mary Gale and said,
I'll make an appointment with you for an interview regarding the air pollution situation in Backland and its solution. However, you have to communicate with my editor-in-chief in advance to finalize the page and time.
Mary's eyes lit up.
All right, thank you very much. Mike, why didn't I think of such a good idea?
This is for the promotion of the National Atmospheric Pollution Council? This reporter Mike has quite a lot of experience after all. Although the Daily Observer isn't one of the best newspapers, its circulation is considerable. Did Mary suddenly come here today because the other members of the House of Commons, who are members of this club, were coming? This type of private club is indeed suitable for politics and business.
Klein seemed to gain an understanding and bade farewell ahead of time. Before becoming a faceless, he didn't want to get involved in high-level affairs such as this. Evening, in an apartment in East Borough. After a busy day, Williams entered the small room he rented, intending to change his coat, get some money, go to the pub for a drink, and settle his dinner there. In the gloomy darkness, he suddenly stopped putting on his coat. He saw a shadow standing by the window, its face completely obscured by the shadow of the hood.
Who told you to look for Lenevis?
The dark figure asked in a low, slow voice. Williams quickly put on his coat, gulped his saliva, and said,
I have a friend, a bounty hunter.
Bounty hunters referred to adventurers who used various bounty rewards as their main source of income. There were a lot of them in Eastborough and in Backland.
Why did he suddenly start looking for Lenevis? This is a bounty that was offered a long time ago.
The black figure was extremely tall. Step by step, he approached Williams.
I don't know, maybe she just wanted to attempt another bounty.
Williams took a very tiny step back. Dark figure pressed hoarsely.
Who is she?
Williams immediately entered a dilemma, but after a few seconds he replied with a trembling voice.
Gio Derecha. I don't know where she lives.
Very good, very honest.
The black figure reached out and patted Williams's body. Without further ado, he walked towards the door. Williams secretly heaved a sigh of relief, believing that his rich experience in the underworld had helped him.
Don't try to be brave when you shouldn't.
At that moment, he saw the shadow snap his fingers. Pah! Williams's thoughts froze, and his body suddenly split into pieces, scattering in all directions, splattering the ground and walls with flesh and blood. Then, the shadow broke the gas pipe. Amidst the sound of gas spewing out from the pipes, he picked up the candle from Williams's desk and struck it against the wick. The black shadow left immediately. A few minutes later, the candle suddenly lit up by itself. Boom! The explosion wiped out everything. Chapter 278. Free, after dinner, in the billiard room of the Bravehearts Bar. Dressed in a simple black coat and a dark cap, Klein held a glass of Southville beer, closed the door behind him, and walked over to Casper's, who was bent over the table, trying to hit the ball. Before he could muster a smile and say hello, Kaspars stopped what he was doing, straightened up, and glanced at him.
Marek isn't here. Cha, there are no other gatherings you want. They have nothing but weapons.
Very familiar with what I want. Fortunately, I have a different goal today.
Klein curled the corner of his lips and said,
I'm here to buy weapons. Buy. Marek isn't here. From the looks of it, they've been exposed and are targeted by their enemies. They've decided to switch locations. Then I won't be able to contact Miss Bodyguard. And I was planning on tricking Millet Carter with Marek zombies as my helpers. They'll keep a secret, they're obedient, and they're unafraid of death. Well, the premise of their obedience is when the influence of Azek's copper whistle is shielded.
As he spoke, a series of thoughts flashed through Klein's mind. Kaspers was slightly surprised. With a look of suspicion, he leaned against his cue stick and rubbed his brandy nose and said,
What kind of weapon are you looking to buy? Have you finished the previous bullets? That's quite a lot of practice.
No, I practiced with bullets I bought at the Quelaag Club.
Klein smiled.
I want to buy explosives, the kind that is widely used in mines.
What do you want to do?
Caspers blurted out as his expression turned solemn and stern.
I'm warning you, don't try to do anything condemnable. I won't allow my customers to challenge Savalas Yard. Of course, you don't have to buy weapons from me.
To be able to become a black market weapon merchant and live to this day, from a certain point of view, he must abide strictly by the rules. At the very least, he wouldn't sell to those crazy fellows.
Klein habitually gave his evaluation from a Nighthawk's point of view and smiled.
You seem to have misunderstood something. I'm not going to blast open the door of a bank vault or try to create any sensational news. I'm helping someone with the demolition of a building, making it easier for subsequent renovations.
Then why didn't he find a proper construction company?
Caspers didn't let down his guard.
Haha, that's a secret chamber. He doesn't want others to know about it.
Klein switched to asking,
Do you know any reliable explosives experts? I'm not very good at this sort of thing, and I'm afraid the whole house will collapse.
When Caspers saw that Klein was making considerations to ensure that the house remained in good condition, the doubt in his mind was immediately dispelled quite significantly. Just as he was deliberating for an answer, an illusory voice suddenly rang out in the room.
There's no need.
A familiar feeling came over Klein. He quickly turned around and found Miss Bodyguard sitting on a chair in the corner without him realizing it. She was still wearing her black, Gothic regal dress and matching soft hat. Her face was as pale as ever, and her blonde hair and delicate features accentuated each other.
Good evening, madam.
Klein slightly bent his back and bowed.
Good evening, ma'am. Sharon?
Caspers did the same.
So her name is Sharon.
Klein thoughtfully waited for her to speak. The lady named Sharon looked at Caspers and said,
Merrick won't be coming back here again. Somebody sat. If you need him for anything, leave a message according to the third method.
Yes, ma'am. Sharon.
Caspars, who had clearly seen a lot of things in his life, seemed to have an instinctive fear of Miss Bodyguard. Upon hearing this, Klein interrupted,
If I wanted to get Merrick's help, how should I get in touch with him?
Through Caspers.
Sharon answered simply.
All right.
Klein spread out his hands and said,
Oh yeah, what did you mean when you said there's no need for a demolition expert?
Sharon's blue eyes didn't waver in the slightest.
I am one.
You are one. You're a demolition expert? Wait a minute, aren't you a Beyonder with special abilities? Probably at Sequence 5? Why are you being a part-time demolition expert?
Klein froze as he felt at a loss for words. In the end, he chose to believe Miss Bodyguard as he said in deliberation.
I'm going to visit.
Before he could finish, he looked at Caspars. It was indicative that the ensuing topic wasn't suitable for this ordinary person.
Fundamentally, due to his body, a black market weapons dealer is indeed considered an ordinary person.
Klein silently added. Sharon looked at Caspers and said,
Prepare the explosives. £2. He'll pay.
Yes, ma'am. Sharon.
Caspers glanced at Klein and limped out of the billiard room, not forgetting to close the door behind him. Seeing Miss Bodyguard looking at him silently, Klein felt like he was being watched by a ghost. He quickly organized his words and said,
I found Baronet Pound's address and visited him in the middle of the night.
After recounting everything that Rafter Pound had told him, Klein began to deduce the process from the story.
I think he lied in many areas, and it's impossible for a Viscount family to be so easily manipulated. If a child can notice something abnormal, how can the royal household and the churches not sense anything? After Rafter Pound degenerated, he had many chances to interact with outsiders and other aristocratic members. As long as he showed a little courage, he would be able to easily resolve the problem. Therefore, I think he must have been hiding something, something that has a high chance of being related to the underground structure. From the state of his mind, it seems that the evil spirit won't be able to escape for a long period of time, so I plan to get some explosives and destroy the entrance to prevent others from getting in. I'm afraid that I might accidentally release the evil spirit.
Yes.
Miss Bodyguard Sharon didn't confirm Klein's guess, but she didn't reject it either. At that moment, Klein hesitated and asked,
I don't know much about demolition, so I'm preparing to draw a layout and hire a demolition expert to give me the positions to lay the explosives and their corresponding weights. If I ask you for help again, how much would I have to pay? If it's too expensive, it's better for me to look for an ordinary demolition expert. After all, I'm getting only £50 from this, while Miss Bodyguard charges £1,000 for 3 days.
Klein had already made plans.
Free?
Sharon's answer was still in her usual style of being terse.
Free?
Klein was shocked.
From what he knew, free things cost the most.
Sharon sat quietly for a few seconds before giving a brief explanation.
After collapsing the entrance, I'll be the only one capable of entering and exiting. Kimam Klenmam, this was what I wished to do.
In other words, after you're confident enough, you plan on getting rid of the evil spirit and harvest the items within? In fact, destroying the entrance is to help you eliminate any interferences or the greed of others. After all, other Beyonders of other sequences are unable to pass through the boulders and dirt like a spirit. Yes, apart from the apprentice pathway, but they don't know about that underground structure.
Klein nodded in enlightenment.
Deal.
After saying that, he hurriedly added,
Can you borrow a few more subordinates from Merrick, subordinates with a tight lip? They'll be helpers to show to Millet Carter.
All right.
Sharon didn't refuse. Klein deliberately didn't mention making any payment for that as he smiled.
Then, let's schedule it for 10 in the morning tomorrow. We have to explore the surrounding terrain in advance. We can't let the explosion cause any obvious damage.
Sharon nodded slightly as her figure faded away into nothingness. Saturday morning, Gio de Recia once again rode in a public carriage to the East Borough to confirm any results that her commissions might have. While waiting for the transfer, she suddenly had the urge to buy a newspaper to read. She took out a penny and bought a copy of the Backland Bulletin from a paperboy next to her. She quickly read through it. Suddenly her eyes froze because of the news article on the 3rd page. At 7:10 last night, there was a serious explosion in the apartment building at 1 Darby Street in East Borough. It's suspected to be a result of a gas leak. The explosion happened at unit number 0306. The tenant died on the spot, to the point of not leaving a complete corpse. At press time, this explosion resulted in 3 deaths and 16 injured.
1 Darby Street, apartment number 0306. Isn't this the place Williams rents? He's dead? He died from a gas leak explosion? No. Absolutely impossible. He would never be so extravagant and use gas, even if there was an installation there. Did he end up like this because he had just accepted my commission? But Lenavis is a wanted criminal. If he discovers that someone was looking for him, all he should need to do is move. There's no need to kill people to keep it a secret. Doing so would instead expose problems. Mihao. The way this was done is too weird and radical. It's like it was done by a lunatic. Pasju. He's clearly just a swindler. Poor Williams. Mihao. I will definitely avenge you. I'll definitely find out the truth.
Zio looked sadly and gravely at the public carriage parked in front of her and didn't choose to board it. She knew that it would be very dangerous to head to East Borough now. She intended to go back at once and tell Forrest to get her to move to a spare rental house. Then she would head to East Borough in a disguise and ask someone familiar to gain a preliminary understanding of the reason and find traces of the killer's tracks.
Sigh, it's true that none of Miss Audrey's commissions are without danger. I thought that as long as I didn't stop someone who is already a wanted swindler and didn't stop him from escaping, he wouldn't retaliate in such a vicious manner. I was careless. I was the one who caused Williams's death. Well, that didn't exclude the possibility that he was also gathering information on other matters. thereby bringing about disaster.
Zio closed her eyes and crossed the street to the waiting area on the other side. At 10:14, after confirming the surface conditions of the fourth epoch structure, Klein and Miss Bodyguard Sharon arrived outside the building at 8 William Street. Sharon had already vanished, and Millet Carter saw Detective Sherlock Moriarty in his grayish-blue worker's uniform and cap and his 3 taciturn assistants.
It's convenient to explore like this,
Klein explained. Millet Carter's eyes swept across the 3 assistants who were obviously good at fighting and nodded in satisfaction.
Your preparations were quicker than I expected. Is one of them a snake-repelling expert?
Yes, they're very good at repelling snakes.
Klein didn't hesitate to give an affirmative answer.
How could a zombie be afraid of being bitten by snakes?
Chapter 279. Extreme Joy Begets Sorrow. In the dark underground structure, Klein walked around the hall with a raised lantern in his hand. He thoroughly checked to see if there were any other entrances. Of course, he didn't dare enter the tunnel that led to the innermost room, and the newly gathered snakes were, once again, blown away by a biting cold wind. After receiving confirmation, he took the initiative to retreat to the side of the gate, where he watched, along with the 3 zombies, as Sharon placed explosives at different locations. Klein sighed softly.
She looks very professional.
And without a doubt, the 3 zombies didn't respond to his musings. However, there was a reason for this. He kept using his spirituality to wrap Ozik's copper whistle so as to shield against its negative effects. Otherwise, he would have encountered their abnormally passionate response. He had no intention of bringing this ancient and exquisite copper whistle with him originally. But considering that he had to guard against the evil spirit's manipulations, he could only sacrifice some of his spirituality.
Miss Bodyguard? No. Miss Sharon said that she's a demolition expert, and from the looks of it, she really isn't bragging. Was she in this line of work in the past? Or does one of her sequences in her Beyonder pathway make her skilled in this domain? According to the information I read back in the Nighthawks, a few candidates like Sequence 9, Criminal, Prisoner, Warrior, and Hunter, Sequence 8, Sheriff, and Sequence 7, Weapon Master and Knowledge Keeper. Heh, the latter has a nickname, Detective. It's part of the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom. As for the rest, I'm completely clueless. I wonder which pathway Miss Sharon is. Nothing seems to match, and she even showed her ability to command the zombies.
While Klein's thoughts wandered and made all sorts of associations, Sharon finished setting up the explosives and, in passing, lit the fuse.
In passing? Lighting the fuse? Hey, why didn't you give any warning?
Only then did Klein jolt back to his senses and was startled. He quickly rushed out of the hall and entered the corridor outside. As for the 3 zombies, they calmly followed behind him. Sharon suddenly appeared and floated beside him.
It's very safe here.
Klein breathed a sigh of relief and asked,
Will dust fall from the tremors over here?
Sharon answered with a single word.
Yes.
As he spoke, Klein took another step back.
That's good.
The hissing sound of the fuse burning reached his ears, making him feel slightly irritated. It wasn't because he was afraid of the explosion that followed, but because he couldn't feel at ease. Sharon said suddenly,
1.
Klein didn't understand what she meant.
Huh?
Rumble! The earth shook violently, and plumes of dust fell from above. Klein's ears buzzed, and for a moment he couldn't hear anything else. If it wasn't for the fact that he was a clown, he would have lost his balance and collapsed to the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Having been distracted and caught unaware, he started to cough. He saw boulders and mud rapidly falling in front of him as they instantly blocked the entrance. During the remaining tremors, Klein gripped the copper whistle given to him by Mr. Azik and observed its reaction. Although he had divined beforehand that his expedition would be safe, he didn't dare to believe it completely, even if it was a revelation gained from above the gray fog since it involved the statues of the 6 Orthodox gods. Therefore, he cautiously judged whether or not the evil spirit was freed with the help of Ezek's copper whistle. The copper whistle's surface was cold but mild, and it had no abnormal changes. Completely relieved, Klein looked at the zombies beside him and confirmed one thing from their eyes. His face was very dirty right now.
That's good. It's in line with how I'm going to explain this to old Mr. Millet Carter. I didn't waste my effort in changing into a different set of clothes.
He walked to the entrance and confirmed that it was completely blocked.
Without causing too much of a commotion, it's true that only those from the apprentice path and beyonders like Miss Sharon can enter in the future. By doing so, she has ruled out many potential competitors. No wonder it was free.
Klein looked at the boulders and dirt before sighing.
Of course I can too. I have a condition similar to a spirit body.
He silently added this sentence inwardly with a smile, but his expression didn't change at all. With an exaggerated snap of his fingers, Klein led the 3 zombies back to the basement of the house.
Let's call it a day.
As for Sharon, she had already disappeared. In the spacious basement, Millet Carter was nervously pacing back and forth, looking at the secret door from time to time. As soon as he saw Detective Moriarty and his assistants exit, he let out a long breath and asked anxiously,
What happened inside?
Klein deliberately panted and said,
That underground structure is too old. It hasn't been repaired in a long time. We were driving the snakes away, but with just a little bit of movement, it collapsed. The whole area has collapsed, but luckily we were close to the door and managed to escape in time.
Millet Carter pounded his left breast.
Holy Lord of Storms! That structure was that dangerous?
Klein answered,
Yes, there are always only a few ancient buildings that can be preserved. The rest would have collapsed in the river of history. I'll bring you in to confirm the situation.
Millet asked cautiously.
Will there be more collapses?
Klein deliberately patted the dust off his body and coughed twice. He then led his employer in and stopped at the entrance that was completely blocked. The walls near the hall had also collapsed, leaving behind only stones and dirt.
No, this area is quite sturdy.
He pointed to the corridor area.
You can use this area.
Millet was silent for a few seconds before he sighed.
Thank goodness I didn't hastily send someone in to explore, but instead went to look for you, a professional. Otherwise, I would have had to bear the burden of the loss of several lives. All right, this commission ends here. I'll pay you the rest of the reward.
As he spoke, Millet Carter took out his wallet, did a count, and was somewhat embarrassed to find that there were only about 30 pounds in cash. Millet mumbled as he looked up at Klein.
Fortunately, I still have other forms of money. Otherwise, I'd have to go to the bank. Do you mind taking gold coins?
Klein smiled.
No, I don't mind any form of money.
The gold pound of the Lowen Kingdom could be in the form of gold coins unless they were of huge denominations. This was the guarantee of the denomination on paper money. However, in the past 100 years after Emperor Roselle, the people of the northern continent had become more and more accustomed to paper money. There were even some members of parliament who wanted notes to replace copper pennies. Gold, in the true sense of the word, already hardly ever circulated in the market. Only some of the old gentlemen would attach a fixed box on the other end of their pocket watch chains, which contained some gold in case of accidents. It was to give them peace of mind, and was also a habit. Millet nodded, and following the gold chain on his clothes, he pulled out a box that flickered with golden light from a certain pocket. He opened the box, took out 5 gold coins, and handed them together with the notes he had previously counted to the detective. Klein didn't hide his actions as he counted the money, and suddenly flicked a gold coin and caught it coolly. Huh! He glanced at the portrait that was facing up and smiled sincerely. Then he pressed his hand to his chest and bowed whilst facing Millet Carter.
Thank you for your generosity, Basha Hayek Bahim. Yes, if it were any other detective, even if they demolished the entrance and the passageway, they would definitely have nightmares upon returning. They would hear things at home, and their minds will turn weak. They would feel like they're being watched all the time and experience other problems. That's the corruption of the evil spirit's aura. It will take a very long time before the effects disappear, but we're different. Miss Sharon is like a ghost to begin with. As for me, I'll be completely fine once I go above the gray fog. As for the 3 zombies, they aren't even afraid of death, so what's there to be afraid of?
Klein lampooned while in a good mood as he bade Millet Cullen farewell and left his house. Arriving on the street without even informing him, the 3 zombies walked in another direction.
Miss Sharon is gone. She really didn't collect any money for the zombies.
Klein smiled as he raised his arm and waved at the departing backs of the 3 zombies. Then he went home and changed into his normal clothes and headed for the Kellogg Club to practice shooting. After also settling his dinner there as a reward for the successful completion of his mission, Klein returned to Minsk Street in a public carriage. The dark, gloomy environment was illuminated by gas lamps, and with his cane he strolled leisurely along the street. Suddenly, he had a premonition which wasn't too good or bad.
What's going on?
When Klein looked up, he saw 2 police constables with a dog on a leash, apparently investigating the streets.
Investigation? An investigation with a police dog? Is this a result of the serial killings? The scene of the murder had the smell of cloves and gooseberries, so they included a police dog?
Klein couldn't help but silently lampoon. The history of dogs dated back as far as the Roselle period, but the numbers had always been small. Considering that he had many things on him, and considering his earlier premonition, Klein decided to take a detour. But at that moment, the 2 policemen saw him and signaled for him to stop. Chashaw. The corner of Klein's mouth twitched as he waited in place with a smile on his face. As they approached, one of the officers showed his identification documents.
Routine investigation.
Before Klein could finish his sentence, the police dog suddenly growled at him and barked endlessly.
All right. Is it because of the smell of gunpowder on me? The smell of gunpowder from my afternoon practice?
Klein instantly realized what was happening. He looked at the faces of the 2 officers who were now on alert. With a thought, he smiled and said,
It's this. I picked up a revolver along the way, along with an underarm holster and bullets. I was planning on handing them over to the police.
Slowly, he took out his revolver, raised his hands to his shoulders, and added with a serious smile,
Officers, I really am not bearing a gun illegally.
As one constable remained on high alert, the other constable received the revolver and said seriously,
You have to come back to the police station with us.
Klein returned with a radiant smile.
All right, but I have a request. Please inform my lawyer, Mr. Jurgen Cooper. I will only accept a body search with him around.
Chapter 280, The First Step. In a corner of East Borough. A drunken Zeon faced the wall, pulled off his pants, and began watering the moss in comfort. When he was done, someone suddenly patted his shoulder. Zeon couldn't help but shiver a few times. He picked up his pants and half turned to see a short boy in a canvas jacket and cap. The boy raised his head, revealing a mild and delicate face despite looking dirty.
Shio, why are you dressed like that?
Zeon blurted out in surprise. Sio put her index finger to her lips to indicate the need for silence. Then she suppressed her voice and said,
I'll ask and you answer. Keep your voice down.
Astonished by her awe-inspiring presence, Zeon could only nod. Shio asked in a low voice,
Which of the guys that Williams knew have died within the past 2 days?
Zeon used his alcohol-paralyzed brain to carefully think for a while and said,
Gavin. Gavin was found to have drowned in the Tussock River this morning. He probably fell into the river last night. The poor sod doesn't know how to swim and likes to enjoy the wind by the river when he's drunk.
Shio's gaze suddenly became sharp. Without any hesitation, she asked,
Did Gavin accept Williams's request to look for the wanted criminal, Lanevis?
Of course, we all got this commission from Williams. Anyway, it's not like it's a big deal. All we have to do is show the portrait to everyone we know, and keep an eye out for someone who looks like him. Oh, Williams, he said that if there's a clue, he'll treat me to 3 days of booze and meat. The poor fellow actually died in a gas explosion. That's why I refused to have my landlord install a gas pipe. Oh, that was months ago. I can only afford a cheap motel now.
Xian droned on. Shio looked sideways, pursed her lips, and stared straight at Xian.
What region is Gavin in charge of? Did he mention anything to you?
He usually goes to the dock area, near the East Balaam dock. He even met me yesterday evening and said that he went to the Workers' Alliance Tavern there to spread the news of his search for Lenavis, and he also showed the portrait of Lenavis to everyone present.
Xian hiccuped. There were many docks in Backland, most of which were considered as the dock area and designated as shipyards. Idiom. Zio asked again, frowning doubtfully.
And after that, did Gavin say what he was going to do?
Of course, drinking. He planned to have a good drink and then find a place to sleep. Oh, the poor sod must have fell hot from drinking and wanted to take a bath in the river, but he forgot he couldn't swim, and it's almost winter.
Xian sighed again.
Gavin didn't discover anything. He had gone to the Workers' Alliance Tavern in East Balaam Dock and distributed leaflets to search for Lenavis, but ended up meeting his demise. It even implicated Williams. The murderer's reaction can no longer be described as extreme anymore. He's simply a lunatic. If I were Lenavis, the easiest option would be to immediately move somewhere else and avoid being found. Unless he's embroiled in something and cannot leave anytime soon. But I wasn't the only one looking for him. There are also many bounty hunters. He may kill Williams, but can he kill that many people? If he had the ability, he would kill off everyone who spread wanted posters in Civilau's yard.
Shio was completely befuddled by the entire matter, just like how she found Williams's death was impossible. In the end, she decided to report the problem to Miss Audrey first, and then head to the Workers' Alliance Tavern in East Balaam in disguise. She wouldn't make any inquiries, and only observe to see if there was anyone suspicious. Sherwood Borough, Rice Police Station. Once again, Klein found himself huddled on a backrest-equipped bench with thieves and drunkards.
How unlucky. To think that I would run into the police and fail to take a detour in time? It's all because of that damn serial killer.
As Klein cursed that particular person, he thought about how to hide his charms and the herbal powder he couldn't explain away and dodge the body search that followed. He had tried to put them in his black gloves, then find a chance to slip them into a hidden spot in the police station, only to retrieve them when he left. Just then, his eyes lit up and he saw the young lawyer, Jurgen Cooper, with his hair neatly combed back. He was dressed like he was attending a banquet. Just as Cooper came over, he was accompanied by a police constable. Jurgen said with his usual serious expression,
You can leave after signing your name.
Klein asked in surprise.
Is that all?
Jurgen nodded slightly.
Yes, they know you're a well-known detective.
What kind of reason is this?
Klein didn't dare to ask further. He immediately got up and followed after Jurgen, who was wearing a long black tweed coat. He signed his name at a leisurely pace before leaving. The weather was different from the last time he was led out from the police station by Jurgen. There was no rain and only thick clouds obscuring the crimson moon and stars. The streets were illuminated by gas lamps that lined both sides of the streets. Klein briskly walked forward and came to Jurgen's side.
Thank you so much. I've troubled you once again.
Jurgen turned his head to look at him and said to him without a smile,
There's no need to thank me. This is my job. This while, though, 2 pounds.
Klein sized him up seriously and revealed a smile.
Okay.
His wallet was bulging recently, and he produced 2 one-pound notes at once. Without a trace of politeness, Jurgen received the payment and said,
If you're willing to enter into a formal partnership, then every time you come to the police station, I'll only charge you £1. Of course, not for the cases that are serious. You have to understand that a large portion of the fees I charge will go to the office.
It's as if I would frequently be invited to the police station for some coffee in the future. Puis, they don't even give coffee. There isn't even a cup of water.
Before Klein could answer, he heard Jurgen add,
For a private detective, getting in and out of the police station is something that happens every once in a while. It's an occupational hazard. Well, I know very well that every private detective has a problem with the illegal bearing of arms and the illegal trespassing in other people's homes. Your response this time was very good. The police couldn't find enough evidence to prove that you were bearing a gun illegally, and the explanation for the gunpowder reaction on your body was quite sufficient. The name Quelaag Club was enough to convince them. Otherwise, you most likely would have had to go to the magistrate's court. So you're not a suspect, but a good citizen. A good citizen who picked up a gun and handed it in, so there was no need for a body search.
All right, but I lost a revolver and the corresponding bullets. That's several pounds, and there's also the lawyer's fee.
Klein squeezed out a smile.
I understand. Lawyer Jurgen, let's establish a formal partnership.
The corner of Jurgen's mouth twitched. With an extremely professional smile, he extended his hand and said,
I hope for a pleasant partnership. I sincerely hope that I don't have to see you too often at the police station.
That's not something that's up to me to decide.
Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh. Back at 15 Minsk Street, Klein eased himself with a hot bath. But at that moment, he once again heard illusory prayers coming from a woman.
Miss Justice, is there a clue regarding Lenevis?
Klein suddenly jumped out of the bathtub, quickly dried his body, put on his clothes, and went above the gray fog. Staring at the constantly expanding and shrinking crimson star, he extended his spirituality and chose to listen.
The Fool. That doesn't belong to this era. Honorable Mr. Fool, there's been a problem with the investigation of Lenevis.
Justice, who was wearing a white gown for an unknown reason, recounted the explosion that happened on Darby Street in East Borough, as well as Gavin's drowning. As a telepathist who had already gained some mastery, she didn't add her own guesses, lest it affect the judgment of Mr. Fool. After listening carefully, Klein frowned, feeling that the killer's reaction was unimaginably extreme.
Unlike Vice Admiral Hurricane Quilangos, Lenevis, as a swindler, would immediately move if he discovered anything was amiss. That should be his professional instinct. There's no reason to follow the clues in reverse and kill those who are seeking him. According to this standard, 80% of East Borough's bounty hunters would die. This would cause a sensation and cause the case to be taken over by the Nighthawks, mandated punishers, or machinery hive mind. Has the benefits Lenevis gained from the ritual of praying to the true creator to send his son down left him mad? This is very consistent with the style of the true creator. However, the problem lies with the fact that it would be difficult for a lunatic to hide himself. Apart from the potential.
Klein fell into deep thought and was in no hurry to respond to Miss Justice. He had read the newspapers and known about the explosion, so he used dream divination to recall the details. Then he wrote a new divination statement.
Clues to the explosion in Darby Street.
As he recited it silently, he leaned back in his chair and entered a dream. He saw a 3-story grayish-blue apartment. On the 3rd floor of the apartment, a room had lost its windows and half the wall had been destroyed. It was filled with signs of an explosion. The scene quickly shattered. Klein woke up from his reverie as he tapped the edge of the table and thought to himself,
The clues are at the scene of the crime? This revelation can also mean that the murderer is still watching the crime scene and wants to finish off the person who comes to investigate the matter. Yes, this will give him a chance to find the person who recently issued the bounty for Lenevis. I'll visit the crime scene in disguise and see if I can find the killer. Even if he isn't Lenevis, he must surely be connected to Lenevis. But he must have hidden himself very well. How can I find him without attracting his attention?
A thought flashed as Klein's eyes was cast onto the all-black eye on the long bronze table. This was a Beyonder characteristic left behind by the marionettist Rasago.
In the real world, I can't use this item to manipulate those strange threads because of the residual mental corruption from the true creator. There will be irreversible harm after interacting with it for a certain amount of time. However, If it was used temporarily, I can use the threads to find a hidden person. That's something acceptable. It's just like how I used it to determine if Miss Bodyguard had left previously.
Klein narrowed his eyes, removed his spirit pendulum, and divined if his trip would be dangerous. The answer was positive, but the amplitude and frequency of the spinning weren't excessive.
That's acceptable?
Klein was silent for a few seconds before returning to the real world. Then, by summoning himself, he placed the all-black eye into an iron cigar case and brought it back to his bedroom. After changing his clothes, sticking his beard on, and getting ready, Klein came before the mirror and examined himself. The faint scholarly vibe that he had was completely concealed by the beard on his face, and his brown eyes seemed to be like an ancient pool which hid and sealed something within. Compared to when he was in Tingen City, Klein almost didn't recognize himself. One by one, he stretched out his fingers and clenched them into a fist. Looking at the mirror, he said in a low and hoarse voice,
"Captain, this is the first step to avenging both you and me."
Before he finished his sentence, he saw himself grinning in the mirror, a brilliant smile on his face.